So far in this chapter, we've seen how to create files and how to get information about files. And Python provides a set of utilities for manipulating files using the operating system's shell utilities, and that's what we're going to look at in this example. So let's start by opening up the shell_start code. To use the shell utilities, I first need to import the shutil module into my app. So let's do that first. So I'll import shutil. And you can see that I've already imported the OS and the OS path modules into my app as well. So we'll start off doing something pretty simple. Let's just make a duplicate or copy of an existing file. Now, this example depends on the textfile.txt file existing, and you can see I've got it over here in my file browser. If it's not there for you, it's probably because you didn't do one of the previous exercises in the chapter, and you just need to do one of the previous exercises, preferably the first one, just to make sure that this file exists. So first, you can see that the code uses the path class's exists function to make sure that textfile.txt exists. And so if it does, what I'm going to do is retrieve the path information for the file. So I'll create a source variable, and I'll set that to be path.realPath. And we'll get the real path for textfile.txt. So that gives me the path to the file. Now, to make a copy, I'm going to use this original path, and I'm going to just put a .bak extension on the file. So what I'm going to do is make a destination variable, and that's going to be source plus .bak inside quotes because it's string. All right. Now I'm going to make a copy using the copy function of the shutil module. So I'll call shutil.copy, and that's going to take the source and copy it to the destination. All right. So let's save, and if this works, then we should see both textfile.txt and textfile.txt.bak for backup. So let's go ahead and run this. And sure enough, you can see that textfile.txt.bak shows up over here in the list. All right, so let's try something else. Let's go ahead and close my terminal. Let's try renaming the original file. And what we're going to do is use the rename function. So this is located in the OS module, and I'm going to call the rename function. And rename takes two arguments, the original file that I want to rename and the file I want to rename it to. So I'm going to rename textfile.txt to newfile.txt. And as you might imagine, this just renames the file specified in the first argument to have a name in the second argument. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. And I'm going to comment out the previous example. So let's run. And let's see, sure enough, you can see now that there's newfile.txt and textfile.txt is renamed, so it's not there anymore. So using the shell is more than just about manipulating files. So let's try something a little bit more interesting. Let's put some content into a zip archive. So we're going to use the shell utilities makeArchive function in order to create an archive file that contains the contents of this entire directory, all this Python code, every file that's in here. All right. So to do that, I first need to import the makeArchive class. So from shell util, I'm going to import makeArchive. And let's scroll back down. Okay. So first, I need to get the directory path from the full path of one of these files, and that will give me the path to this file directory right here. So what I'm going to do is call the path.split function, okay? And path.split, remember we saw this earlier. I'm going to pass in the source variable here. This gives me the real path up to this text file, and I'm going to assign the results. Remember that split returns two values. So I'm going to assign the root dir and tail, which isn't going to be used, to the results of path.split. So that will give me the directory name right here in this variable, which is what I'm going to use, right? And then what I need to do is call the makeArchive function. So I'll call shutil.makeArchive, and I need to give it the name that I want to create, so I'll just call that archive. And then I need to give it the format, and I want to create a zip file. And then the directory that I want to place into the zip file, and that's going to be root dir. All right, so I've got my files renamed. So we've got newfile.txt, textfile.txt.bak. There's one more change I need to make. Remember up here on line 13, this code only runs if textfile.txt is present. And it's not there anymore because we changed the name of the file. So I'll just change this to say, hey, if textfile.txt.bak is present, which it is, then go ahead and run this code. So now we can save and we can run this. So we'll run this in terminal. Right, it runs, and sure enough, you can see that archive.zip is right there. Now, if you were to look inside this zip file, you would see all the files in here, all the Python code, these text files that we've created, and so on. But we can actually get finer grain control over adding specific items to the archive. So let's try that next. So I'm going to do is close this terminal. So what I need to do is import the zip file module that gives me control over zip files. So I'm going to import from the zip file module. I want to import the zip file class. And then next, I need to add code for creating the custom zip file. And what I'm going to do is use the with keyword. So the with keyword lets me create a local scope that simplifies working with objects. So I'm going to write with zip file. And the zip file takes a couple of arguments similar to other file-based functions in Python. So I'm going to give it the name that I want to create, and that's going to be testzip.zip. And then I need to give it the file access, so I want to be able to write to the archive. And then I'm going to use the as keyword. I'm going to say as new zip. So I'm creating this variable with the result of this class's construction. And this makes it simpler for me to manage the context of opening and closing files. So since this is a context manager, I indent my code. And what I'm going to do is manually add things to the zip file. So I'm going to write new zip, and I'm going to call the write function, and I'll add newfile.txt. Oh, I have to put quotes. And I'll also write newzip.write, and I'll add the textfile.txt.bak files. Right, so I'm only going to add this file and this file to this archive, and everything else just gets left alone. And if this works, we should see a new file called testzip.zip get created, all right? So let's go ahead and save this, and let's comment out the previous example, so we don't run it again. All right, so let's right-click and choose Run Python File in Terminal. Right, and sure enough, you can see that there's testzip.zip right there, and I encourage you to go ahead and explore it on your computer. If you open up the archive.zip, you'll see all these files, and if you open up the testzip archive, you'll only see these two files that are in there. So you can see that by using the shell utilities module of Python, it gives you really great control over manipulating file objects in the operating system.